Have you ever wondered how a great civilization can just vanish? It's not always a slow decline. Sometimes it happens in a single day. Imagine a battlefield, now just a silent plain covered in grass. This isn't just where an army fell, it's where an entire way of life ended. When belief collapses all at once, civilizations don't fade away, they shatter. Ancient legends call it a curse, a betrayal, or even an act of the gods. But beneath the myth lies the story of one day that changed everything. A day when survival no longer resembled the past, and memory itself broke under the weight of what was lost. This civilization was resilient. For centuries, it had weathered droughts, rivalries, and internal conflicts. Ancient maps show a thriving network of cities connected by roads and water systems. Archaeology reveals a culture that adapted and endured. They weren't fragile, but hidden texts whisper of tensions just before the final battle of overconfidence, strained alliances, and leaders who mistook stability for permanence. At the same time, the climate was quietly shifting, straining harvests and migration routes, and it was in this pressure cooker that they made a fatal decision: to meet their enemy in open battle instead of falling back. The battle was a storm of miscalculation. Commanders used outdated intelligence, misjudged the terrain, and clung to formations that were no longer effective. We've found weapons clustered in areas where their lines must have suddenly broken, signs of a chaotic collapse, not an orderly retreat. The survivors' accounts are confusing and contradictory, painting a picture of total disarray. To make matters worse, the weather turned against them: a sudden storm, a blinding wind, or scorching heat that turned the tide. This society was built on unity, and when its center broke, the whole structure came apart. It couldn't just The end wasn't a fiery annihilation, but a quiet, rapid unraveling. As news of the defeat spread, authority dissolved. Archaeology shows cities simply abandoned, not conquered. Workshops were left untouched, granaries still full. It was a society in shock. Maps stopped being updated. The world, for them, froze at that moment of defeat. Forbidden texts tell of councils dissolving and leaders vanishing, because their legitimacy died on that battlefield. There was no one left to organize a recovery. So as we look back at this quiet field, we see it wasn't just the loss of soldiers that destroyed them. It was the loss of certainty, the loss of belief in themselves. It makes you wonder, was this end inevitable? Or did one single choice, born of pride and pressure, turn a crisis into an extinction? This is the story of how one defeat became a permanent silence. In the days after the battle, survival replaced strategy. The defeat wasn't just a loss of territory. It shattered the very framework that organized labor, belief, and defense. Archaeology reveals a world grinding to a halt. Roads that once pulsed with trade fell into disuse. Almost overnight, checkpoints were abandoned, signal towers left unmanned. Ancient maps tell a chilling story, showing a sudden contraction of the known world, as if the horizons themselves had collapsed inward. Forbidden texts hint at a creeping panic among the elites. They understood a terrifying truth. Their authority depended entirely on the perception of strength. Once that illusion broke, loyalty dissolved like mist. This crisis was made worse by climate stress. Failed harvests and disrupted trade routes would have once been managed by a central system. Now, with no one to coordinate relief or redistribute food, these problems became lethal. Lost cities marked this unraveling with haunting clarity. Excavations uncover homes left strangely intact, with food stored but never eaten, and tools set down as if their owners expected to return at any moment. This is evidence of a desperate, unplanned flight. As neighboring powers advanced, they met little resistance, not because the people were conquered, but because they were scattered, their society already fragmented. Archaeology shows cultural continuity fading rapidly. Languages vanished from inscriptions. Rituals ended abruptly, and administrative seals were no longer used. The civilization didn't just transition. It broke apart, losing coherence faster than it could adapt. How this collapse was remembered was shaped by politics. The successor states benefited from portraying it as inevitable, a deserved fate. Their chronicles blamed decadence, divine punishment, or moral failure. They suppressed the reality that the civilization had been functional and resilient right up until the battle removed its organizing core. Modern technology now challenges this old narrative. Radiocarbon dating and settlement analysis reveal sharp, sudden discontinuities. Not a gradual decline. This reframes the story as a catastrophic rupture, not a slow decay. The changing climate amplified every consequence of the loss. Seasonal patterns that were once manageable became deadly without coordination. Archaeology shows widespread malnutrition, shortened lifespans, and desperate, short-term adaptations that never stabilized. Ancient legends transformed this environmental hardship into curses linked to the battle, embedding the trauma deep within their mythology. This reinforced a belief that recovery was impossible, that the world itself had turned hostile. Without a shared belief in their future, any attempt to rebuild felt futile. This fragile aftermath shows how a military defeat metastasized into total disappearance. As order unraveled once belief collapsed, the story sharpens into a warning. Civilizations depend not only on their strength, but on their confidence in recovery. When a single battle destroys that confidence, the fall can accelerate beyond anyone's control, leaving a silence that echoes through history. Thank you for watching. In the generations after the fall, absence became the loudest evidence. Archaeology doesn't show rebuilding, it shows replacement. New cultures settled among the ruins, but never adopted the old language, rituals, or memories. It's as if they were ghosts in someone else's house. Ancient maps from neighboring powers mark this territory as empty, contested, or simply undefined. It signals that the civilization was gone, even though people still lived there. Forbidden texts, written by survivors, speak of a chilling adaptation. Forgetting, they abandoned the symbols and stories that invited danger, because to remember was to remain a target. Climate instability only accelerated this erasure. Harsher conditions demanded constant movement, not monuments. Survival became a practice of silence, not continuity. Modern technology brings this disappearance into sharp, unsettling focus. Genetic studies trace a continuous line of people, but their culture vanishes from the record. Satellite imagery reveals infrastructure decaying without any attempt at repair. Roads dissolve back into paths, and cities return to empty fields. For a long time, political narratives framed this as a natural succession, a gentle fading away. It was a convenient story that avoided an uncomfortable truth. One single battle severed the thread of their entire identity. Suppression followed not through active force, but through quiet neglect. No authority was left to preserve the records, and no successor wanted to inherit a story of such sudden, shocking vulnerability. They preferred myths of gradual decline, which absolved everyone of responsibility. What makes this destruction so unique isn't the scale of death, but the speed of forgetting. Archaeology shows just how quickly their most sacred symbols lost all meaning. Temples were stripped for building materials, and sacred spaces became anonymous ground. Legends from surrounding cultures remember the battle vaguely, more as a cautionary tale than as history, a place where certainty itself died. The unstable climate ensured no stable center could re-emerge to piece their culture back together. Rebuilding requires faith in permanence, and that faith vanished the moment the battle proved that tradition alone could no longer guarantee survival. This civilization's end is a pattern, not just a story. It shows how systems collapse when coordination fails. No single invasion followed. No empire replaced it. Instead, power scattered. Local identities hardened, and memory broke into 1,000 pieces. Modern reconstructions showed that recovery might have been possible if any central authority had survived to organize a response. But the battle removed that capacity in a single, decisive stroke. Later, histories deliberately avoided this lesson, framing the collapse as destiny rather than a direct consequence of that one defeat. As we look at this land, now indistinguishable from any other, a final thought settles in. This civilization wasn't just destroyed by its enemy. It was destroyed the moment its own people lost their belief in continuity. As our own societies face immense pressures, the past offers no comfort, only a question. Do we recognize that some battles end more than just wars? And do we understand that the most devastating defeat is the one that convinces a people there is nothing left to rebuild, leaving history to remember them only as an absence and silence to finish the work? Thanks for watching, and if you found this compelling, please subscribe for more.